Hi, I'm Anne Pollard, and this is the reading of my book, Cleo's Fabulous Adventures, The Realm of the Woods, Chapter 10, Haniel the Hawk. Bacchus and Cleo turned to find a new path laid out before them. In the glow of the moon, it was easy to see which way to proceed. The two looked very different in the moonlight. Bacchus had a glow around him that was radiating from his black fur, and it seemed like he was absorbing the moonlight and then shining it back out onto the world. Cleo's complexion took on a deeper shade of bronze, and her hair took a similar glow to Bacchus's. They walked for only a short time. The landscape quickly became filled with trees, and there was a distinct line between the meadow where Gabriel was and the woods they were about to enter. In the moonlight, the trees took on an almost ethereal feel. Most of them were tall and skinny, lots of evergreen trees with a few oak and sweet gum mixed in. There was a night symphony playing that included insects, frogs, and crickets, and an occasional hoot from the nearby owl. Once Bacchus was well into the forest, he stopped. He was completely still, not a muscle twitching. Cleo followed his lead. Then they heard it. It was a screaming, loud cry that sounded like "Cree-yi!" It came 3 times before the hawk flew down and landed on a low branch in one of the sweet gum trees. In the moonlight, it was hard to see it clearly. Bacchus looked up and said, "Hello, Haniel. I can barely see you in the moonlight." "Yes," she screeched. "I love the power and pull of the moon. It really helps me restore my intuition, but I, too, need the sun and daylight. Please bear with me for a moment." Haniel launched from the tree limb back into the night sky. She became a vision in form. Her wings spread out to an amazing width, and the colors of her white and brown feathers merged together to become a gorgeous picture. She flapped her wings only twice before she became airborne, and then it was completely silent as she glided up into the heavens. She disappeared for a while. Then the sky began to grow brighter. Bacchus and Cleo looked up to see Haniel clutching the sun in her claws and dragging it across the sky. When it was just in the right place, she released it and traveled back down to the earth. "That's going to sting for a while," she said, hopping up and down to cool off her feet. "It's a cool thing to be able to do, but look what it does to our feet. They're always yellow like the sun." Haniel flew down to a lower branch so that she could see Bacchus and Cleo more clearly, and now they could see her as well. Her coloring was exquisite. Her feathers were a myriad of white and brown interwoven to form the tapestry of the most regal coat. Her beak was sharp and curved, and her eyes were almost transparent, and she had huge claws at the base of those yellow feet. "Bacchus, it is my honor to see you again. You are looking very well," said Haniel. "The honor is all mine," said Bacchus, "and thank you for bringing us the sun." Cleo just stood there, stunned. "Cleo, it is my honor to meet you as well," continued Haniel. "I have been looking forward to this for some time." Cleo tried to regain her composure as she greeted Haniel. Haniel nodded back to Cleo and said, "I'm so pleased to know that you've been learning about your intuition. Trusting your inner guidance is a skill worth developing. It will serve you well, as I know it already has today. If you will allow me, I would like to show you a different perspective of that." "That sounds great. I'm curious to learn all I can," said Cleo. "Then it will be my honor," said Haniel. "Look around you now, where you are. What do you see?" she asked. "I see trees of all kinds, leaves and small plants on the ground, and a lot of those sweet gum balls," said Cleo. Yes, that is what you can see from your perspective, said Haniel. Now, will you close your eyes for me? Cleo closed her eyes. I will take you on a flight so you can see it from a much broader perspective. Will you allow me to be your eyes? Cleo nodded in agreement. Okay, here we go. As Haniel launched from her tree, Cleo could see the world through Haniel's eyes. Haniel flew through the trees, sometimes barely missing a branch, and Cleo felt as though she was flying with Haniel. It was exhilarating. She held her breath as Haniel soared up into the sky. The flight was so smooth, Cleo felt like she was floating. As Haniel looked down, Cleo could see for miles. She saw the woods become a green form of treetops. She could not see trunks anymore, just the green tops. Then she saw the separation of the woods and the meadow where Gabriel and the other gophers lived. She could see distinctly the mounds of the gophers, and she could see the gophers that were out of their holes. She saw the stream that they could not cross without the help of the trees. The color was a rich, deep blue at its deepest point. Now she could see the depths of the water and how it changed. The stream was so long she could not see the end of it. As they circled back, she could see Bacchus on the ground, and even at their height, she could see him quite clearly. Then Haniel took a turn and rose even higher in the sky. As she ascended, Cleo now saw yet another view of the landscape. As Haniel reached 100 feet, the world became even smaller. Cleo felt like she was looking down from a 10-story building. From that height, the trees looked like bushes. The stream looked like a trickle of water, and Cleo could no longer see the details of the animals on the ground. She almost had to catch herself because it felt so real, being that high up. Haniel flew back down through the trees to her original branch and lightly touched down. When Cleo could see they were back where they started, she opened her eyes. "Wow!" she screamed. "That was the most amazing thing ever." Haniel nodded in agreement. As Cleo regained her balance, she laughed. Haniel smiled. "Cleo," said Haniel, "did you know that is the height I fly when I'm hunting prey? I make large circles in the sky looking for my next meal. My eyesight is about 8 times better than yours, and when I see my catch, I dive down at 120 miles per hour. I even have a third eyelid that I can use to protect my eyes while I'm diving." "It's fascinating how we both have a third eye, isn't it, Cleo?" Haniel laughed, and Bacchus joined in as well. Haniel continued, "Do you see what I mean when I say different perspective? What looked like such a small space to you from here is actually vast, and it only takes a different perspective to see that. And when you look at things from a different perspective, it's easier to let go of the small stuff that doesn't really matter. All of the prickly details that no one really cares about. What is it that they say in your world? Don't sweat the small stuff. That's when you really feel the joy. And Cleo, there is nothing better than joy. You are ready to fly higher than you have ever before. And I hope you can remember our flight as you continue your adventure." "I don't think I could ever forget that," Cleo said. Haniel said, "Do you remember what Elmoria was talking about in your higher self? Well, now you can imagine what your higher self sees when it's looking at you. It doesn't see the small stuff that you all live in most of the time. It sees the broader view of your whole life. It sees your potential. It sees you as part of a vast, larger whole. And that's how it can help you navigate through things that you can't see from your perspective. So when El Moria said to release things to your higher self and allow it to guide you, now you can see what he meant." That circles back to the intuition we were talking about earlier. See how you can trust your intuition to help guide you because it's coming from the higher self, the higher perspective. Your intuition knows things that your physical senses don't know and will never be able to know. Yes, I can definitely see that now, said Cleo. It is much clearer, but I still don't really understand it. Haniel said, there are some things your mind will never understand because it's controlled by your ego. Your ego doesn't want you to experience things like the higher self. That can only come from a feeling, a knowing. Trust your inner senses and your heart, and you will understand from a different perspective, from a higher perspective, and then you will begin to understand your soul purpose. Cleo smiled and said, sometimes I wish I knew what my soul purpose was. It just seems that I keep doing the same thing over and over again every day. I mean, I like my job and all, but sometimes it just feels like it's not enough. And I certainly can't say that I have joy every day in doing what I do. Haniel said, your search is just beginning. Trust Bacchus to help guide you. Think of him as your higher self. He can also see things from a higher perspective, and I think he still has a lot to teach you. Bacchus looked over to Haniel, and a very subtle smile rose on his face. Thank you, Haniel, for taking Cleo on her flight adventure. I am sure she will remember that always. And thank you for your words of wisdom. What you have shared with Cleo is of vital importance. You are both most welcome, said Haniel. Remember, Cleo, we are all here for you always, in every moment. You only need to ask for our help, and we will be there. Haniel then looked back to the sky and took flight. In only an instant, she looked like a small black speck in the sky. She cried 3 more times, and then she was gone. Cleo looked back to Bacchus and said, so, Bacchus, can you show me my soul purpose? I would really love to know what it is. Patience, Cleo. We have much more yet to learn. Then he turned toward the path that was opening up before them and began the journey to the next destination. Thank you for joining me. Have a fabulous day.